Hatred, the emotion that makes some people afraid of feeling it, others fear it, some see it as being a sin or not spiritual at all, and others actually love that feeling. It gives a sense of power and motivation to them. Hatred is essentially the emotional state of deep and intense dislike, disgust, or even hostility towards someone or something. It's one of the most extreme forms of vibrational resistance to something. Here, you can build so much resistance to the degree that one wishes to destroy, to eliminate the thing that is perceived to be causing the unhappiness within them. It is the internal condition that leads to things like big, real damage or massacre and war. But hatred is actually a cover emotion that hides feelings of pain, hurt, and fear. And also, don't let hatred fool you, because it's actually the opposite of power. It only occurs when we feel powerless to a threat, when we become reactive. So, what can cause hatred? It arises from perceiving a threat, a situation that jeopardizes what we hold dear, and we feel that's likely going to hurt us. When feeling threatened, fear arises and we rapidly go into the defensive state of anger. And anger serves as a means to protect personal boundaries and ensure safety. It's an attempt to push away or eliminate a perceived threat. A lot of us also often experience being targeted by hatred. This is especially true if we grow up in an environment where a lot of shame is present. So as soon as we did something that our parents don't approve of, we are considered a disappointment. And this comes a lot from families that are very restrict, have a strong sense of what is right and wrong, and also in the majority of religious families. That means in our childhood, the belief which we inherit from the people who were raising us was that there is something about us that's bad or wrong. And after a while, this belief starts to internalize. It's now in our head. So now that we internalize this hatred, we interpret it as a personal flaw. And this leads to self-doubt, self-hatred, and self-distrust. However, it's crucial to recognize that hatred doesn't exist because we are a really bad person. It doesn't even exist because they are right about us. Hatred exists because the other person perceives us to be a threat to something they value and are emotionally attached to. To understand the situation, we must question what threat they perceive us to pose. For instance, it could be a threat to their physical safety or overall well-being. It can be to our relationship to someone, or a threat to how they want the world to look like, and we just don't fit in that, to the core beliefs which are keeping them safe, or even to their own self-esteem. By identifying the specific threat perceived, we can gain insights into the roots of their hatred. Unfortunately, even in a spiritual community, admitting to feelings of hatred is often seen as something really negative and bad, much like anger. There is an expectation of a spiritual enlightenment that disallows any hint of hatred. They encourage to bury those emotions deep within and never acknowledge them, like they are an illusion. But here's the truth. When we feel threatened, it's more than natural and normal to experience moments of hate. It doesn't mean that it will stay permanently there. It's rare to find someone completely free from all forms of hatred. So the person that believes that to be enlightened can never feel those emotions will walk around always smiling and pretending to be the most calm person on earth, with a really soft voice. But outside of him, we'll see a lot of anger in others and war, and will be target of hatred. How can that even be possible? If you are a spiritual person, you know that what you are inside is what you will attract. So you become a perfect match to those who hold the same energy. Now, what happens when you suppress your emotions and ignore them? Do they really go away? Of course not. They start to affect your body actually, and you feel more and more discomfort until it completely consumes you and makes you believe that you are going crazy. That is why it is so crucial to confront and acknowledge these emotions rather than suppressing them. It can be highly detrimental not to do so. What makes a person enlightened is not when you are able to not feel the so-called negative emotions. It's when you allow them to flow through you without resistance and understanding the message that those emotions are trying to tell you. Now, it doesn't matter if you are spiritual or religious or whatever. Admitting to what you hate is actually really important for you to become conscious of the hatred that you have, so that you can find some resolution to it instead of just trying to convince yourself that it doesn't exist. The problem is that hatred tends to snowball. Here's how it unfolds. When we perceive a threat, our initial reaction is to push away, leading to feelings of hatred. As we focus on this threat with a hateful attitude, more things will occur because we live in a law of attraction-based universe. So we start attracting more evidence that validates the perceived threat, intensifying our fear and hatred towards it. This in turn manifests further evidence of its dangerous nature, fueling our hatred even more and more and more. And the cycle continues endlessly until we are consumed by an overwhelming amount of hatred, driving us to seek nothing but the destruction of the object of our hatred. It sounds a lot like war, don't you think? When it comes to hatred, regardless of whether it's us hating them or they hating us, what we have to do is to address the fear and the pain that is underneath the hatred. We have to access the vulnerability. So this is what you can do when you encounter hate. Step number 1. Have you ever noticed that when you become aware that someone else hates you, you then start to hate that person back? Even though before you were aware, you just didn't care. But because you hold the belief that if a person hates me, it means that she will make a plan to hurt me, your fear turns into hate towards them. Here, we must question the perceived threat. It is essential to be fully present and aware of the threat that this person poses or believes that we pose to them. So ask yourself, does this threat genuinely exist? Is it really a threat to me or to them? Why does that person feel threatened? Can you see the other person's pain? When you become aware that someone hates you, you identify with this particular thing so strongly that in and on itself is causing you pain. Step number 2. Hatred emerges as a defensive response of the human ego. When you experience hatred towards others, ask yourself, what threat does this thing pose to me? How does it hurt me? What am I afraid of? How can I change this situation without hurting the other person? For example, a woman may hate another woman because she poses a threat to her self-esteem or self-concept, or a man may hate another man because someone is flirting with his girlfriend and he feels a threat to his relationship's security and connection. Or a group of people may hate another group of people because of the different beliefs or the way they behave. and they view the others as a threat to life and happiness on their community or even on Earth. Step number 3. Try to develop compassion for someone who hates you and might even try to harm you. I know how challenging this can be, and I'm not saying that cultivating compassion is about excusing their actions and not letting them off the hook. But when someone starts hating us, we perceive them as a threat, which makes you start these vicious cycles that I explained before. And to break free from this cycle, we can redirect our focus. So instead of focusing on the hate, your focus goes towards understanding the pain that fuels their hatred. So try to figure it out. Where does their fear originate? Why do they perceive you like that? Can I do something nice about it? Sometimes the only thing that you can do is express to the other person in a nice way that you have no intention on hurting her or him. Or say that you don't see the things the way that he or she sees. And that's it. If the other person still doesn't change, that is not your problem anymore. At least you are mature enough to deal with that, and you can now let it go. Take that focus out of it. Don't wait until they change. And now try to do that, but with a person or group of people that you hate. What do you hate about them? Why is that a problem for you? What does it mean for you? Are they really a threat? If so, how? What are you afraid it will happen? Why is it so wrong for them to not believe what you believe? Is there a way for you to live in harmony with them without them having to believe in what you believe? If you feel threatened, you have inside of you like a inner child who is scared and feels vulnerable. Try to speak with that part of you. Ask, what is he afraid of? When did that happen to you before? Try to understand him and make them feel safe. If your hate has to do with a connection with someone you love, then try to take actions that could reinforce your connection to the other person. Have a warm, open, and honest conversation with them about the threat that you feel. Once you recognize that hatred is about their and our own insecurities, you can release the need for violent self-defense. Step number 4. At its core, hatred comes from a sense of powerlessness over our emotions. So we feel fear, and that insecurity makes us feel hate. This means hate helps us not feel insecure, but you still feel bad because hatred is not a pleasant feeling. So hatred revolves around our belief that we are powerless to avoid feeling negative emotions. And in order to change that, we must prove to ourselves that we have the power to influence our emotional state. Any action or focus that brings us to a sense of empowerment or security regarding the perceived threat can lead to a better emotional state. When we experience hatred, we feel bad and believe that we cannot feel good as long as the source of our negative emotions remains. However, shifting our focus on understanding the threat and working on gaining compassion allows us to recognize our capacity to deliberately alter our emotional state. It empowers us to realize that we have the ability to intentionally shape how we feel, and that in a healthy way. The safer you feel, the less inclined we are to hate. This world functions like a mirror, which means that if we wish to end hatred in the world, we have to first end it within ourselves. The aspect of us that hates is not malevolent or the devil or evil. You can see it as a vulnerable inner child feeling powerless and overwhelmed by the world and its emotions. This child within us requires attention and unconditional presence. And don't make the mistake when you are doing shadow work or inner child work or parts work to see any of them as less than you, or that only if they change can you then be happy. This is actually a form of emotional abuse because you are putting too many conditions. What you need to give yourself to heal is unconditional support, no conditions. You have a lot of parts inside of you that are deeply in pain, and what they need is your understanding, your presence, and caring actions. We must consciously attend to this inner child, understanding its fears and helping it feel better about what it is afraid of. And by offering love and compassion to this aspect of our lives, we create a sense of safety, reducing the intensity of hatred. Instead of addressing the internal world in a state of fear, we tend to try to eradicate the threat itself outside of us. We wage a war against it in order to try to get rid of it. But this does not work in a universe that is based on the law of attraction, because whatever you resist, it persists. The one true power that we have is to deal with our reaction to the threat and what they did, which is actually a good thing because it means that we are not powerless to our hatred. So by addressing that pain, the hurt, the fear, and then consciously focus on anything that causes you to feel safer and more joy, to feel that state of integrity, will make the hatred feelings disappear. I hope this helped in some way, and as usual, I wish you a very nice week.